The pen trembled in my hand as I stared at the empty signature line on the financial waiver form. My mother stood over me, her manicured nails drumming impatiently on the kitchen counter while my stepsister Madison preened in the doorway, car keys already dangling from her fingers. Keys to a BMW she hadn't even test-driven yet. "Just sign it, Claire," Mom said, her voice sharp with that particular edge that meant she was done pretending to care about my feelings. "It's not like you're going anywhere special. Community college doesn't need $18,000. I looked down at the form. Release of college fund assets, it read. Beneficiary, Claire Elizabeth Morrison. New allocation, Madison Alexandra Hartwell. My father had set up this fund before he died. Back when I was 8 and he still believed my mother would honor his wishes. 14 years of compound interest sitting there. My ticket to MIT, to the bioengineering program I'd worked 6 years to get into. But here's the thing they didn't know, the thing that made my hands steady even as I picked up the pen. I'd already lived this day before. 10 weeks ago, I died. In my first life, I'd refused to sign. I'd cried and pleaded and called my father's estate lawyer, who informed me that the fund had been structured in a way that gave my mother full control until I turned 21. She'd forged my signature anyway, taken the money, and I'd lost my MIT acceptance because I couldn't pay the deposit. I'd ended up at the state school on partial scholarship, working 3 jobs, watching my dreams crumble while Madison posted Instagram stories from her BMW, from her European gap year, from her mediocre private college that Mom paid for in full. I'd drowned in debt, dropped out junior year, worked dead-end jobs for 6 years while my stepsister married rich and my mother pretended I didn't exist. And then, on a rainy October night, I'd stepped off a curb and a delivery truck had sent me spinning into darkness. But I woke up in my childhood bedroom in my 18-year-old body on the morning of my high school graduation. The morning that was, I realized with crystalline clarity exactly 4 months before this moment, the moment where my mother would demand I sign over my future. I'd spent those 4 months differently this time, very differently. "Fine," I said now and signed the form with a flourish. "Take it." Mom blinked, surprised by my easy compliance. Madison squealed and bounced on her toes. "Oh my God, thank you, Claire. I promise I'll remember this. You're such a good sister." I smiled at her, and it was genuine. "I know you will, Madison. I'm counting on it." That night, I opened my email and reread the message that had arrived 3 days earlier, the one they didn't know about because I'd been checking my email on the library computers for months. "Dear Ms. Morrison, congratulations. We are delighted to inform you that you have been selected as one of 15 recipients of the Simons Foundation Fellowship for Exceptional STEM Achievement. This full-ride scholarship includes tuition, room and board, a living stipend, and funding for research projects." The scholarship was worth $320,000 over 4 years. I'd never known it existed in my first life. But this time, I'd known exactly where to look, exactly what essay to write, exactly which of my research projects to highlight. I'd submitted my application in October, the week after I woke up in my teenage body. I'd used my knowledge of future research trends, problems that wouldn't be discovered for months, solutions that hadn't been published yet. It was, technically, cheating. I didn't care. They'd cheated me out of a life. I was taking it back. Let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you about the Morrison family and how my mother, my biological, actual mother, became the villain of my story. My father died when I was 8. Heart attack at his desk, sudden and absolute. He was a patent attorney, successful and careful, and he'd left behind a detailed will, half his estate to my mother, with the stipulation that it was for household expenses and her well-being. The other half in trust for me, split between a college fund and a locked account I'd receive at 25. For 2 years, Mom was fine. Sad, but fine. We managed. Then she met Richard Hartwell at a charity gala. Rich, divorced, with a daughter 1 year younger than me. Madison was pretty and charming and used to getting her way. Richard was generous with his money and stingy with his attention. They married within 8 months. That's when everything changed. Madison wasn't cruel at first, just favored. The prettier bedroom, the better birthday parties, the dance lessons and art classes while I was told we couldn't afford my robotics camp. I didn't understand that Richard's money came with conditions. He'd spoil his daughter, but he wasn't going to play daddy to someone else's kid. Mom went along with it. Then she started enforcing it. Then she started believing Madison deserved more because Madison was special. By the time I was 13, I was washing dishes while Madison was getting her nails done. By 15, I was working part-time at a diner to buy my own school supplies while Madison got a credit card with a $5,000 limit. By 17, I was a live-in maid who occasionally attended the same expensive private school my stepfather paid for because it looked bad to have me at public school. I survived because of school. I threw myself into academics with desperate intensity. Math and science became my sanctuary, the one place where effort actually mattered, where Madison's charm and Mom's favoritism couldn't touch me. I built robots in the school lab after hours. I taught myself programming and entered competitions. I won a statewide science fair with a project on neural interface technology. I got into MIT early admission with a near-perfect application. And then my mother sat me down and told me we needed to talk about realistic expectations. There was no money for MIT, she said. The college fund wasn't enough to cover it, though she'd never shown me the statements, never let me see how much Dad had actually left. Richard wasn't going to help. I should look at state schools, community college. Not everyone is college material, Claire. I'd cried, I'd begged, I'd shown her my acceptance letter like it was a winning lottery ticket. She'd shrugged. Maybe you shouldn't have wasted all that time on robot projects. Madison focused on being well-rounded. That's why she's going to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt. Madison, who'd barely scraped a 3.2 GPA, who'd never won an award for anything except most congenial in the yearbook, was going to a prestigious private university on Daddy's dime, and I, with my 4.0 and my MIT acceptance, was being told to aim lower. 2 weeks before graduation, Madison decided she wanted a car. Not just any car, a BMW 3 Series, the one her best friend Bethany drove. $60,000. Richard said no. They'd already bought her a Honda, that was enough. So Madison did what Madison always did. She cried to Mom. And Mom looked at my college fund and saw the solution. In my first life, I'd fought it. I'd called the estate lawyer, found out too late that the fund's structure gave Mom control. I'd watched her forge my signature and take my money. I'd accepted MIT's sympathetic email withdrawing my acceptance. I'd gone to state, lost my scholarship after I couldn't juggle 3 jobs and a full course load, and spent 6 years drowning. Madison drove that BMW for 3 years before trading it in for a Mercedes. She posted photos of herself at music festivals and beach resorts, while I served coffee to people who didn't learn my name. Mom sent Christmas cards with photos of her and Madison, cropped to exclude me. Richard died of a stroke my second year of college, and I wasn't invited to the funeral. I'd survived it, barely. And then I'd died. And then I'd woken up. The first thing I did was verify the date. June 1st, graduation morning. The second thing I did was test my knowledge. I pulled up news sites on my phone, checking headlines. Everything matched what I remembered. The president was the same. The stock prices were the same. The viral TikTok dance was the same. The third thing I did was cry in the shower for an hour, grieving and grateful in equal measure. The fourth thing I did was start planning. I had 4 months before the college fund confrontation. 4 months to change everything. First, research. I spent entire days at the public library, using their computers, documenting everything I could remember about the next 6 years. Technology trends, research breakthroughs, which professors at MIT were doing the most cutting-edge work, scholarship opportunities I'd never heard of. The Simons Fellowship was perfect. Prestigious, full ride, and with a selection committee that valued innovative thinking in STEM fields. The deadline was January 15th, well before MIT's deposit was due. Applications required 3 essays, 2 faculty recommendations, and a research proposal. I crafted my essays with 6 years of future knowledge. I wrote about the coming revolution in neural interface technology, about bioengineering challenges that wouldn't be published in journals for another 2 years. I made it sound like brilliant speculation, like I was just ahead of the curve. I was careful, threading the needle between impressive and impossible. For my research proposal, I outlined a project on biointegrated sensors that wouldn't be discovered until 2027. But I framed it as theoretical, as ambitious, as the kind of blue sky thinking that organizations like Simons loved to fund. Mrs. Chen, my AP biology teacher, wrote one recommendation. Mr. Okafor, who ran the robotics club, wrote the other. They both loved me. I was the student who stayed late, who helped younger kids, who made their programs look good. They didn't know I was helping them because in my first life, I'd had no one, and I'd learned that kindness was a currency worth spending. I submitted the application in October. I checked my library email obsessively through November and December. On January 8th, the notification came. Semi-finalist. On February 3rd, finalist interview via Zoom. On February 20th, the acceptance letter. I'd printed it out and hidden it in my school locker behind my AP Calculus textbook. I visited it sometimes just to touch the paper, to confirm it was real. $320,000. Full ride. Stipend included. Everything I needed. Everything Mom was about to steal from me rendered irrelevant. I could have told them right away. Could have waved the letter in Mom's face the first time she mentioned Madison's car. But I didn't, because I wanted them to take the money. I wanted Mom to forge my signature and steal from me with a clear conscience. I wanted Madison to drive around in her BMW, posting photos, living her best life. I wanted them to think they'd won, that they'd crushed me, that I was nothing, because the fall was going to be so much sweeter. The confrontation came in late March, right on schedule. Mom made her announcement at Sunday dinner. Madison needed a car, a nice one, and the college fund was the practical solution. I was to sign the release form by the end of the week. I played my part perfectly. I protested, just enough to seem genuine, but not enough to actually fight. I called the estate lawyer from my flip phone, let them deliver the bad news about Mom's control over the fund. I cried in my room loudly enough for Madison to hear and feel smugly satisfied. And then I signed. Madison got her BMW the following week. She drove it to school every day, parked it in the senior lot where everyone could see. She posted endless Instagram stories. Hashtag blessed, new car, hashtag BMW girl, hashtag living my best life. Her friends cooed and congratulated her. My friends, the three I had, avoided mentioning it, their sympathy awkward and useless. Mom started talking about which community college I should attend. It's just 2 years, Claire, and then you can transfer. Plenty of people do it. She said it so reasonably, like she hadn't just stolen my future to buy her stepdaughter a luxury vehicle. Richard was uncomfortable with the whole thing, I could tell. He avoided eye contact at dinner. But he didn't intervene. He never intervened. I played the role of defeated daughter. I picked up extra shifts at the diner. I looked at community college websites on the family computer, left the tabs open so Mom would see. I let my shoulders slump. I stopped smiling. And in secret, I completed my MIT enrollment. I paid my deposit from the Simons Fellowship. I arranged my housing. I registered for classes. I planned my escape. April came. May came. Graduation approached. Madison got a spray tan and a custom dress for the ceremony. Mom bought her a Pandora bracelet as a graduation gift. They took me to Target and let me pick out a new backpack. For community college, Mom said, pointedly. I smiled and thanked them. On graduation night, after the ceremony, after the dinner at the fancy restaurant where Richard toasted Madison's future and forgot to mention mine, I went home and started packing. Not my whole room. I'd be back for that later. Just the essentials. Laptop, documents. The few things I actually cared about. I had a plan for the summer. I'd gotten a research internship at a biotech lab downtown, something I'd applied for in January. It paid enough to rent a tiny studio apartment. I'd told Mom it was just another job, and she'd nodded distractedly, not caring where I was as long as I wasn't asking for money. I moved out on June 3rd, 2 days after graduation. I told them I was staying with a friend for a few days. They barely noticed. By June 10th, I'd signed the lease on my studio. By July 1st, I'd started the internship. The researchers were impressed with my knowledge. Of course they were. I'd spent 6 years in my first life reading journal articles and science news, desperate to stay connected to the dream I'd lost. Now that knowledge was an advantage. I worked, I learned, I prepared, and I waited for the fall. August 15th, MIT move-in day. I didn't tell them I was going. Why would I? They thought I was enrolled at City Community College, thought I was living in some dumpy apartment working retail. They hadn't asked for my schedule, hadn't asked to see my acceptance letters. Madison had left for Vanderbilt 2 weeks earlier, and Mom had spent a full day helping her move, taking photos, crying proud tears. For me, she'd said, "Let me know if you need anything." in a tone that suggested she hoped I wouldn't. I loaded everything I owned into my beat-up Honda Civic, the one I'd bought, with diner money in my first life, the one I'd bought again with internship money in this one. I drove 8 hours to Boston. I moved into my dorm in the late afternoon, while other students and their families bustled around with mini fridges and desk lamps. No one was there to help me carry boxes. No one took photos of me in front of the MIT welcome banner. No one cried proud tears. I didn't care. I was home. My roommate was a girl named Priya from California, brilliant and kind, already talking about her research interests. We clicked immediately. She helped me unpack, shared her mom's homemade snacks, invited me to dinner with her family before they flew back west. That night, alone in my dorm room, I took out my phone and composed a text message. I'd been planning the wording for months. Hi, Mom. Just wanted to let you know I'm all moved in at MIT. Classes start Monday. Thanks for everything. Claire. I attached a photo, me in front of the MIT dome, smiling, wearing a university hoodie I'd bought at the campus store. I hit send. Then I turned off my phone and went to sleep. I didn't turn my phone back on for 3 days. When I finally did, I had 87 missed calls and 43 text messages. The texts were a journey through the 5 stages of grief. From Mom. What is this? Is this a joke? Claire, call me immediately. This isn't funny. MIT? With what money? You forged documents. This is fraud. I'm calling the admissions office. How dare you lie to us all summer? You're an ungrateful little bitch. After everything I've done for you, Madison is devastated. You've ruined her first week at college with this drama. From Madison. What? You're at MIT? How? Mom is freaking out. What did you do? This is so awkward. Everyone is asking me about it. Why didn't you tell us? From Richard. Claire, please call your mother. She's very upset. I deleted them all without responding. Instead, I composed a single, carefully worded email. Dear Mom, I hope this email finds you well. I wanted to clarify a few things since you seem confused. I was accepted to MIT in December of my senior year and awarded the Simons Foundation Fellowship in February. This is a full-ride scholarship covering tuition, room, board, and living expenses for 4 years, awarded to 15 exceptional STEM students nationwide. You can verify this on the MIT website if you'd like. I didn't mention it earlier because I knew you were busy with Madison's preparations for Vanderbilt, and I didn't want to distract from her big moment. I also didn't need any financial support from the family, so it seemed easier to handle everything myself. I hope you can understand why I chose to be independent about this. I've learned that it's best not to rely on others for things I can manage alone. I'm attaching my class schedule in case you're curious about what I'm studying. I'm taking courses in bioengineering, multivariable calculus, and molecular biology. It's challenging but exciting. Best regards, Claire. The tone was perfect, polite, distant, just pointed enough to sting without being openly hostile. I copied Richard and Madison on the email. Then I went to class. Let me tell you about the next 4 months because they were glorious. MIT was everything I remembered and more. The classes were brutal, the workload intense, but I thrived. I knew which professors were worth impressing, which study groups to join, which research opportunities to pursue. I'd lived through the struggle once. This time, I knew the shortcuts. By October, I'd joined 2 research labs. By November, I'd co-authored my first paper. By December, I'd been invited to present at a conference. Meanwhile, back home, things were falling apart. I didn't hear this directly from them. I'd blocked their numbers after the initial barrage, but I had other sources. My old robotics teacher, Mr. Okafor, emailed me in September to congratulate me on MIT and mentioned that he'd heard through the grapevine that my family was surprised by my success. Translation: they'd called the school trying to find out how I'd tricked MIT into accepting me. A former classmate messaged me in October. OMG, I saw your mom at Target and she pretended she didn't see me. Also, Madison is back from Vanderbilt? I thought she was supposed to be there all semester. I did some digging. Carefully, using social media and public records. Here's what I found. Madison had lasted exactly 6 weeks at Vanderbilt. She'd come home in mid-October, officially on medical leave, but really because she was failing 3 classes and had gotten caught plagiarizing a paper. Vanderbilt had strongly suggested she take a semester off and reconsider her academic readiness. She was living at home again, enrolled at City Community College. The same community college Mom had pushed me toward. The BMW was still in the driveway at least. She had that. Mom had apparently become obsessed with figuring out how I'd stolen my way into MIT. She'd called the admissions office multiple times. I knew this because MIT's Student Services had contacted me to verify that I wasn't being harassed by an unstable parent. I'd confirmed that my mother and I were estranged and that I didn't want her to have access to my academic information. They'd flagged her in the system. She'd also, according to Mr. Okafor, been telling people around town that I'd deceived the family, that I'd pretended to be struggling while secretly planning to abandon them. She was playing the victim, painting me as a con artist. It might have worked, except that I'd been well-liked in high school. People remembered the girl who worked at the diner, who tutored kids for free, who'd built award-winning robots while her stepsister threw parties. The narrative didn't land the way Mom wanted. By November, I heard she'd stopped talking about it. Just went silent on the subject of her eldest daughter, fine by a bike, me. I came home for winter break. Not to visit them? God, no. But I had some unfinished business. My childhood home was technically half mine. Dad's will had been specific about that. The house was to be held in trust until I turned 25, at which point Mom and I would own it jointly. She could live there, but she couldn't sell it without my permission. In my first life, she'd gotten around this by making my life so miserable, I'd signed away my claim for $5,000. I'd been desperate, drowning in debt, and she'd known it. This time, I didn't need her $5,000. I had a research grant, a stipend, and prospects. This time, I held the cards. I drove to the house on December 22nd, mid-afternoon. Mom's car was in the driveway. So was Madison's BMW. I knocked on the door. Mom answered. For a moment, we just stared at each other. She looked older than I remembered, or maybe I was just seeing her clearly for the first time. Tired, bitter lines around her mouth, eyes that had never looked at me with warmth. Claire, she said flatly. Hi, Mom, can I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. I walked into the living room, my living room, the one with the fireplace Dad had installed, and the built-in bookshelves he'd designed. Madison was on the couch, scrolling her phone. She looked up and blanched. Oh, hey. Hey, Madison, how's community college? Her face flushed. I'm taking a gap year. Vanderbilt was too. I'm reapplying for next fall. Sure, I said pleasantly. Good luck with that. Mom crossed her arms. What do you want, Claire? I sat down in Dad's old armchair, made myself comfortable. I wanted to talk about the house. Silence. Heavy and hostile. I've been reviewing the trust documents, I continued. Dad set things up so that we'd co-own the property when I turned 25. That's in 7 years. But there are clauses about occupancy, about maintenance responsibilities, about what happens if you want to sell before then. We're not selling, Mom said sharply. I know, but I've been thinking about the future, about what happens when I graduate, when I'm working in Boston or San Francisco or wherever. I'll have my career, my life, and you'll be here. I leaned forward. Here's what I'm proposing. I'll sign over my half of the house to you, full ownership, no strings attached. All I want in exchange is a formal acknowledgement that you used my college fund for Madison's car and an apology. Mom's mouth fell open. You want me to apologize? In writing, a letter acknowledging that you took the $18,000 my father left for my education and used it to buy Madison a BMW, and an apology for lying to me about the state of the fund, for forging my signature, and for attempting to sabotage my college prospects. Madison made a small noise. Mom's face went purple. I don't have to explain my financial decisions to you. You're right, I interrupted. You don't. And I don't have to give you the house. I can wait until I'm 25, exercise my ownership rights, and force a sale. We'll split the proceeds 50-50, or I can move in here after graduation and exercise my right to occupancy. It's a big house. We could be roommates again. The horror on her face was delicious. Or, I said softly, you can write a letter, 2 paragraphs, acknowledging what you did and apologizing. I'll sign over the house and we'll never have to see each other again. Your choice. I stood up. I'm in town until the 27th. Let me know. I walked out without waiting for a response. The letter arrived on Christmas Eve, slipped under the door of my studio apartment. 2 paragraphs, handwritten, exactly as I'd requested. Claire, I acknowledge that I used the college fund established by your father for your education to purchase a vehicle for Madison. I believed at the time this was the best allocation of family resources. I apologize for not discussing this with you more openly and for any distress this caused. I also apologize for any miscommunications regarding your college prospects. I'm proud that you were able to secure funding for MIT on your own. Mom. It was the worst apology I'd ever read. Passive voice, minimizing language, no real accountability. Miscommunications. Any distress. She couldn't even name what she'd done, but it was in writing. It was signed. I took it to a notary public on the 26th and had it certified. Then I had my lawyer draft the property transfer documents. I signed over my half of the house with a smile on my face. Because here's the thing Mom didn't know. I didn't want the house. I didn't want her money or her property or anything she could give me. What I wanted was for her to admit in legal documentation that she'd stolen from me. And now I had it. I sent her the signed transfer on the 27th with a note. Merry Christmas. Spring semester was when things really started to accelerate. In January, my research on biointegrated sensors caught the attention of a professor at MIT's Media Lab. She invited me to join her team. By February, we were collaborating on a paper. By March, we'd filed a provisional patent. In my first life, this technology hadn't been developed until 2027, and the patent had made 3 researchers very wealthy. This time, I was one of those researchers. At 18, the patent was filed under MIT's Technology Licensing Office with me listed as co-inventor. My share would be 30% of any licensing fees or commercialization revenue. The professor estimated it could be worth millions if it went to market. I was careful not to reveal how much I knew, how certain I was that this would succeed. I played the role of brilliant but humble undergrad, just throwing out ideas, just lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. Meanwhile, I'd been using my knowledge of the next few years to make other moves. Small investments in stocks I knew would boom. Cryptocurrency purchases that would appreciate 1,000-fold. I was building wealth quietly, systematically, using the one advantage my rebirth had given me. By April, my portfolio was worth $50,000. By May, $75,000. I was 19 years old and financially stable in a way I'd never been in my first life. I didn't tell anyone. Not my roommate, not my professors, not anyone. I just worked, studied, and waited. Because I knew what was coming next. The call came in late May, right before finals, an unknown number, local area code. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Claire? It was Richard, my stepfather. He sounded terrible. Hoarse, shaky. Claire, I need to talk to you. I said nothing. It's your mother, he continued. And Madison, we're in trouble. Financial trouble. I didn't know where else to call. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely neutral. The thing is, he took a breath. Richard lost his job back in February. We've been living on savings, but it's running out. Madison's Vanderbilt tuition for next year. They accepted her appeal. She's going back in the fall, but we can't pay it. And your mother's she's been struggling. Struggling. The word hung in the air. We were wondering, Richard said, and I could hear how much it cost him, if you might be able to help. I know things have been difficult between you all, but we're family. And I understand you have that scholarship, that you might have some financial flexibility. No, I said. Silence. Richard, I'm an 18-year-old college student. I have a scholarship that covers my education, not a trust fund. I work a research position for a stipend that barely covers groceries. I can't help you. But the house, I signed that over to Mom, remember? That's her asset now. She could sell it, but the market is slow and we need money now. Then she should sell Madison's car. The silence was longer this time. That car was bought with money stolen from my college fund. Yes, I remember. My voice was still calm, still neutral. Sell the BMW. That's $60,000. That'll cover Madison's tuition with plenty left over. Madison needs that car for what? For looking cool? She's going to college in Tennessee. There's public transportation. She can walk. She can do what I did. Work and save and figure it out. Claire, please. I have to go study for finals. Good luck, Richard. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from guilt. From satisfaction. They sold the BMW in June. I know because Madison posted about it on Instagram. A photo of the empty driveway. Caption, end of an era. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices for your dreams. #growing up. Hard choices. #Vanderbilt. The comments were sympathetic. So brave, so mature, what a good daughter. I didn't laugh, I didn't comment, I didn't acknowledge it at all, but I felt the scales balancing. Sophomore year was my coming out party. The biosensor research I'd worked on freshman year got published in Nature Biotechnology in September. My name was on the paper. Third author, but still, at 19, I had a Nature publication. My inbox exploded with conference invitations, collaboration requests, interview opportunities. The patent started attracting interest from medical device companies. By October, we were in licensing negotiations. By December, we'd closed a deal. A major biotech firm would license our technology for an upfront payment of $2 million, plus royalties on any commercial products. My 30% share was $600,000. At 19 years old, I was suddenly wealthy. I kept it quiet, moved my money into trusts and investment accounts, diversified my holdings. Bought a small condo in Cambridge near campus and used it as a rental property for grad students. Modest, smart, sustainable. I didn't buy a BMW. The holidays came. I didn't go home. I spent Thanksgiving with Priya's family in California. They'd invited me months earlier after learning I was estranged from my parents. Christmas, I volunteered at a Boston shelter and then had dinner with Mr. Okafor, who'd moved to the area for a new job and reached out to reconnect. "I'm proud of you, Claire," he said over Ethiopian food in Cambridge. "You've done something remarkable. I hope you know that." I smiled. I had good teachers. "You had determination. That's rarer." He paused. "I ran into your mother last month. She was at the grocery store. She asked about you." "What did you tell her?" "That you were doing well. That you were thriving." He looked at me carefully. She seemed diminished. Sad. I nodded. Felt nothing. "Do you think you'll ever reconcile?" he asked. "No," I said. "Some things can't be fixed." She made her choices. He didn't argue. In January of my sophomore year, I got a Facebook message from Madison. "Hey, Claire. I know we haven't talked in a while. I wanted to reach out because I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about the college fund and the car and everything. I didn't understand at the time what it meant. I was selfish and stupid. I thought it was just money, that it didn't matter because you were smart enough to figure something else out. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what Mom did, what I went along with, and I'm ashamed. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be. Maddie." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me, the part that was still 8 years old, still washing dishes while Madison got manicures, wanted to tear into her, to list every instance of casual cruelty, every dismissive comment, every moment she'd taken for granted that she deserved more. But another part, the part that had died and come back, the part that had won, that part was tired. I wrote back, "Madison, thank you for the apology. I accept it. I don't think we're going to be close. Too much has happened, and I'm not interested in rebuilding a relationship that was never really there. But I hope you figure your life out. I hope you find success and happiness on your own terms. Take care." Claire Short, civil, final. She replied, I understand. Thank you. That was the last time we spoke. Junior year was when everything crystallized. My research was going incredible. I'd joined 3 labs, co-authored 5 papers, presented at 6 conferences. I was being courted by graduate programs, by research institutes, by companies offering 6-figure starting salaries. The patent revenue kept coming. Royalties started kicking in as products went to market. By the end of the year, I'd made another $400,000. I was a millionaire at 20. I stayed humble, kept my head down, worked hard. But I was building an empire slowly and carefully. And I was happy. Genuinely, bone-deep happy in a way I'd never been in my first life. I had friends, a community, professors who respected me, research that excited me, a future that was mine. The final confrontation came in the spring of my junior year. I was home in Cambridge working on a grant proposal when my apartment buzzer rang. I checked the video intercom and my stomach dropped. It was my mother. I almost didn't let her up. Almost. But curiosity won out. I buzzed her in, opened the door, and waited. She looked old. That was my first thought. She was only 52, but she looked 60. Thin in an unhealthy way. Gray streaks in her hair, clothes that didn't quite fit right. Hello, Claire, she said. Mom. We stood in the doorway for a moment. Then I stepped aside. Come in. She walked into my apartment slowly, taking in the space. It was small but nice. 1 bedroom, updated kitchen, large windows overlooking the street. Tasteful furniture. Bookshelves full of textbooks and journals. You've done well for yourself, she said. Yes. I've been following your career, the publications, the patent. People in town talk about you. The local paper did a story, MIT student from our town, making breakthrough discoveries. I said nothing. She turned to face me. I came to apologize. A real apology, not like the letter. Okay. I was a terrible mother to you after I married Richard. I favored Madison. I let her and her father push you aside. I stole from you. Yes, stole, that's the right word, to make her happy. And when you succeeded despite everything I did to hold you back, I was angry instead of proud. She stopped, swallowed hard. I told myself you were difficult, that you were cold, that you didn't need me. But the truth is I failed you. I chose a man and his daughter over my own child. And I've been living with that guilt for 2 years. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Why now? Because Richard left me. Ah, there it was. He moved out last month, filed for divorce, took Madison with him. She's living with him now, working while she finishes school. And I'm alone in that big house, the one I made you sign over, and all I can think about is how I destroyed my relationship with my daughter for a man who didn't even stay. She was crying now, real tears, not performative ones. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, she said. I know I can't undo what I did. But I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd given birth to me, who'd raised me for 8 good years, who'd then spent a decade breaking me down. I believe you're sorry, I said finally. I believe you've realized what you lost. But I can't forgive you, Mom. Not because I'm holding a grudge, but because forgiveness would imply wanting a relationship, and I don't. She flinched. You're right that you can't undo it, I continued. You made your choices. You chose Richard and Madison over me again and again for years. You stole my college fund. You tried to sabotage my future, and yes, I survived. I thrived. But that doesn't erase what you did. I know. I'm not angry anymore, I said, and realized it was true. I was, for a long time. But anger takes energy, and I'd rather spend that energy on my life, my work, my future. So I'm not angry. I'm just done. Claire, please, I'm going to ask you to leave now. I'm not going to give you money if that's why you're here. I'm not going to let you back into my life. You're not going to meet my future partner or children. You're not going to be at my graduation or my wedding or any of the milestones you should have been part of. I walked to the door and opened it. "But I hope you figure your life out," I said, echoing what I'd told Madison. "I hope you find some peace. I just won't be part of that journey." She stood there, tears streaming down her face, looking at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Then she walked out. Senior year was a victory lap. I graduated summa cum laude with a double major in bioengineering and computer science. I gave a speech at the senior celebration. I had job offers from 3 major tech companies and admission to 5 top graduate programs, all with full funding. I chose to stay at MIT for my PhD. Another 5 years in Boston, working with the best researchers in the field, building on the foundation I'd created. My patent portfolio had grown. I'd filed 3 more patents during undergrad, all on technologies I knew would be valuable. The licensing revenue was steady. I was making more in passive income than most people made working full-time. I bought a house in Cambridge. Not huge, but comfortable. 3 bedrooms, a home office, a small yard. I furnished it carefully with things I loved, books and art and plants. I hosted dinner parties. I went to concerts. I traveled. Tokyo, London, Barcelona, all the places I'd dreamed about in my first life but never had money to visit. I lived. 2 years into my PhD, I got an email from my mother's lawyer. She'd died. Cancer, quick and aggressive, diagnosed in January and gone by March. I was listed as next of kin. I felt nothing. Not grief, not relief, just a distant acknowledgement that a chapter had closed. The estate was small, the house, some savings, personal effects. Madison and I were to split it 50-50 per the will. I signed the papers without contest, took my half in cash, about $140,000 after taxes and fees, and donated it to a scholarship fund for foster kids pursuing STEM degrees. Kids who, like me, had been failed by the people who should have protected them. Madison sent me an email. "Thank you for being fair about the estate. I know you could have made it difficult." I didn't respond. I defended my dissertation 6 months early at 26. My research on neural interface technology, the same research I'd speculated about in my Simons Fellowship application 7 years earlier, had led to 3 Nature papers and a startup company. The company, Neural Bridge, was valued at $50 million in our Series A funding round. I owned 40% of it. I was, on paper, worth $20 million. I stayed in academia, took a faculty position at MIT, started my own lab, mentored students who reminded me of myself. Brilliant, driven, underestimated. I married at 28. A fellow professor, someone who understood the work, who challenged me intellectually, who saw me as an equal. We had a small wedding. Priya was my maid of honor. Mr. Okafor walked me down the aisle. I didn't invite Madison. Didn't send an announcement. She'd remarried, had kids, moved to Florida. We were strangers who shared DNA and a complicated past. That was enough. At 30, I sat in my home office and wrote in my journal, a habit I'd started after my rebirth, documenting everything I'd changed, everything I'd built. 10 years ago, I died in the rain. 10 years ago, I woke up and decided to take my life back. I could have been vengeful, could have destroyed them deliberately, used my knowledge to ruin their lives the way they tried to ruin mine. But I didn't need to. I just needed to win. I won by getting the scholarship they never knew about. I won by making them irrelevant to my success. I won by building a life so full and rich and meaningful that their betrayal became just a footnote in my story. Mom is gone. Madison is a stranger. Richard is a memory. The college fund they stole bought a car that Madison drove for 3 years before trading in. Meanwhile, I built an empire. I closed the journal and looked around my office. Diplomas on the wall, patent plaques, photos from conferences and collaborations, a framed copy of my first Nature paper, and on my desk, in a simple frame, the letter from MIT that had arrived in December of my senior year of high school. The acceptance letter I'd received the first time, the one that had meant everything before. My mother stole my ability to accept it. In this life, I'd received it again. But this time, I'd been ready. This time, I'd had the Simons Fellowship. This time, I'd won. They'd tried to take my future. I'd built a better one, and that, in the end, was the sweetest revenge of all.